in the silence between thoughts, where the usual noise of the mind gradually dissolves, leaving only pure presence. In this barely perceptible space, something greater than mere desires is born. Here, intentions are formed, subtle impulses of the soul that have not yet taken shape, but are already beginning to change reality. And it is here that the universe is always listening, not in the way a human listens, through words and meaning. It perceives more deeply, more subtly, more purely. It does not speak the language of sounds or phrases. Its language is the vibrations you emit every second of your existence. These are invisible waves of energy that form your feelings, your thoughts, your inner states, and the universe's response does not come in words, but in events, in unexpected coincidences that cannot be ignored, in people who appear at the right moment, in doors that suddenly open or close, in flows of energy that gently guide you toward where you are meant to be. And today, you will come closer to understanding these subtle laws. You will learn the 7 golden rules of interaction with the universe, not as theory, but as a living inner key capable of transforming your perception of reality. These rules do not require effort. They require awareness. They do not force. They reveal. Simply allow yourself to feel, without haste, without expectations, without trying to explain everything, and observe how reality begins to speak to you in a language that has always been near, the language of the universe itself. Where your attention is directed, there your energy inevitably begins to flow. This is not a metaphor or just a beautiful idea. It is a subtle law of perception that operates constantly, whether you are aware of it or not. Your attention is like a beam of light in an infinite space of possibilities. Where it falls, movement begins. Form is created there. Life is born there. If you repeatedly look into fear, if you return in your thoughts to anxious scenarios, to doubts, to expectations of the worst, you, without noticing, begin to feed that fear. It becomes stronger, denser, more tangible within your field of perception, and gradually it begins to color your reality. But if you look toward your dream, if you allow yourself to hold the image of what your soul is striving for, if you return to this feeling, to this inner light again and again, you begin to bring it to life. You give it energy to grow, and it gradually becomes part of your reality, first in feelings, and then in events. The universe does not evaluate, divide, or judge. For it, there are no categories of good or bad. It does not choose what to give you. It simply amplifies what you hold within yourself the longest, what you feed with your attention and emotional energy. Therefore, the first rule is simple, yet profound. Consciously choose what you nourish with your attention, because that which you look at most often is what begins to form your reality. The universe does not perceive words the way the human mind does. It does not respond to formulations, promises, or external expressions of desire. It hears much deeper. It perceives the vibration of your intention, the inner frequency behind every "I want." It is not what you say out loud, but what you truly emit within yourself at the moment of desire. That is why a vague, unclear inner state produces an equally vague external result. When you do not fully understand what you want, when there is doubt, contradiction, or hidden fear inside, energy disperses. It does not gather into a single flow. It does not form a clear direction. But a pure intention works differently. When clarity arises within, when desire becomes calm, confident, without inner conflict, then a path opens. Not because the universe rewards you, but because you yourself begin to emit a clear signal to which reality starts to respond. And in that moment, it is important to pause and ask yourself one honest question. What do I truly want if I remove fear, doubt, other people's expectations, and internal limitations? Not what is right to want, not what I should want, but what remains when I am alone with myself, without noise, without pressure, without the fear of making a mistake. And it is precisely this answer that becomes your inner compass, the point from which a direction of movement begins to form, a quiet but precise orientation that the universe always recognizes without error. You do not attract into your life what you simply want on the level of thoughts or words. Desires alone do not create reality. You attract what you are in each moment of time, your inner state, your dominant frequency, your sense of self within this world. That is why it is so important not only to dream, but also to observe who you are becoming while you dream. A state of gratitude is a special point of perception of reality. It is not just an emotion about something specific. It is an inner feeling that life already carries value, meaning, and movement toward you. And in this state, amazing things begin to happen. Doors that once seemed closed gently open. Opportunities that were invisible suddenly become obvious. And what required enormous effort begins to unfold naturally, without resistance. Not because the world has suddenly changed, but because your point of emission has changed. But there is also another state, the state of anxiety. When there is a lot of tension inside, expectation of bad outcomes, doubt, and inner pressure. In this state, even simple paths begin to feel difficult. Even easy solutions seem inaccessible, and the space around you seems to contract, reflecting this inner compression. The universe does not punish or reward. It simply mirrors your inner frequency with precision. It reflects not your desires, but your state, not your words, but your deeper vibration. And that is why the key to change always begins within, with who you are at this very moment, not only with what you want to achieve. Control is one of the most subtle and convincing illusions of the mind. It creates a sense of safety, as if, by thinking everything through, holding it tightly, calculating and compressing it inside yourself, reality will inevitably follow the desired scenario. But life does not move through tension, it moves through flow. And when you hold your desire too tightly, when there is fear of losing it, not achieving it, missing it, or doing it wrong, you, without noticing, begin to block its natural movement. Energy compresses, the flow slows down, and what could have arrived easily begins to feel like a distant goal. Letting go does not mean giving up. It is not indifference and not loss of interest. Letting go means stopping the struggle with the process. It means trusting life to unfold events in the way they are truly meant to unfold, without constant inner tension, without trying to control every step, every sign, every outcome. In this state, an astonishing lightness appears. You continue to move, act, choose, but inside there is no longer contraction. There is space. There is breathing. There is acceptance that the path may be wider than your current point of view. It is precisely in this trust that the movement of the universe begins to unfold, not as chaos, but as a precise, delicately structured route that takes into account more than human fear is capable of seeing. Because fear always looks narrowly, it limits the field of possibilities to the most obvious and most tense scenarios. But the universe sees wider, much wider than any attempt at control. And when you let go, you do not lose control. You simply stop interfering with what already knows the path better than anxiety and doubt ever could. Gratitude is not just an emotion or a reaction to events that have already happened. It is a special language spoken by a completed reality, one in which desires have already become experience and dreams have already taken form. When you truly give thanks, it is as if you step beyond time. You stop waiting and begin to live in a state as though what you are striving for has already become part of your life. That is why gratitude in advance has such power. When you give thanks, not for the past, but for what is still forming, you enter the vibration of what has already been received. This is not self-deception or an attempt to convince reality. It is an inner transition into a state where your consciousness is no longer separated from the result, where desire is no longer experienced as lack, but becomes presence. In this state, everything in your perception changes. You begin to feel calm where there was once anxious anticipation. You begin to see opportunities where there was once uncertainty. It is as if you are already living inside the version of reality you are striving for. And the universe responds to this in a very subtle but precise way. It does not argue with your feelings. It does not contradict your inner states. It is as if it says, if you already feel this within yourself, then it exists as a possibility. And if it is possible, then the path to it is already open. And in that moment, gratitude becomes not a request or an expectation, but a quiet confirmation of the connection between you and what is just beginning to manifest in the material world. Nothing in this reality arises by chance, even if at first glance it seems chaotic or unpredictable. Behind every event, there is a subtle system of connections that cannot be seen in haste, but can be felt in a state of presence. Every encounter that appears on your path carries meaning. Every person is not just a random passerby, but part of a deeper interweaving of events unfolding around you. Every sign you notice, repeating numbers, phrases, images, inner sensations, is not just coincidence. It is the language of the universe, which does not speak directly, but constantly seeks to be understood through symbols, situations, and synchronicities. Even what seems like random coincidence often turns out to be a precise response to your inner processes, as if reality gently reflects what is happening inside you, hinting at direction without forcing it. But this language is very quiet. It does not shout or demand attention. It reveals itself only in the pauses between thoughts, in moments of silence, when inner noise begins to fade and space for feeling appears. That is why it cannot be heard in haste. When the mind is overloaded, when attention is scattered, when you are constantly moving forward without stopping, the signs remain unnoticed. Slowing down is not stopping life. It is returning to the ability to see more deeply. When you slow down, you begin to notice what has always been there. It becomes clearer how events are connected, how some doors gently close to open others, and how every step is already woven into a broader design. And in this attentive silence, you begin to truly hear reality. You are not just an observer of this reality, watching events from the outside. You are far more deeply involved in the process than it may seem at the level of ordinary perception. You are a participant, an active element of a living field in which movement, interaction, and creation of new forms are constantly taking place. The universe does not exist separately from you as something distant and unreachable, but it also does not do everything for you, or live your life in your place, or replace your will. It moves through you, through your perception, through your state, through every inner decision you make, even at the level of feelings and intentions. In this interaction, there is no separation into you and it in the usual sense. There is a single flow that expresses itself through your individuality, and in this flow, every thought matters. Every thought is not just a random impulse of the mind, but a seed placed into the soil of reality. And what you choose determines what will eventually grow in your life. Every feeling is a force of growth. It either strengthens that seed, giving it energy to develop, or weakens it, changing its direction. Feelings are not just reactions. They are living energy that fuels the process of manifestation. And every action is already a form of magic, not in a mystical sense detached from reality, but in the most direct sense, as the moment when the inner becomes the outer. When the invisible begins to take shape as events, decisions, encounters, and outcomes, it is through this interaction that you create your reality, not separately from the universe, but together with it, in constant co-creation. And now you know, not just a set of ideas or beautiful concepts, but the 7 golden rules that reveal a deeper understanding of how energy moves, how events form, and how subtly your inner state interacts with the surrounding reality. These rules are not meant only to explain the universe. Their true essence is different. They become a bridge that connects you to it, to that invisible flow that has always been near, but not always consciously recognized. This is not knowledge to be memorized by the mind. It is a state that gradually unfolds within you as you begin to observe yourself, your reactions, your thoughts, and your feelings more consciously. And the most important thing to remember is this: you are already inside the flow, not somewhere at the threshold, not on the way toward it, but already within it. Every breath you take, every feeling, every thought is already part of this continuous movement of life. You are already part of a greater design that cannot be fully grasped by the mind, but can be felt by the heart. In this design, there are no accidental roles or unnecessary elements. Everything is connected, everything interacts, everything unfolds in its own rhythm. And therefore, there is no need to search for something far outside or to try to achieve what is already present within the process of your existence. Sometimes, the most important thing is not to add more effort, but instead, to pause for a moment, to take a break, and simply begin to feel yourself, to feel life, to feel that subtle flow that has always been here, quiet, alive, and real.